Hey guys, welcome to the shop. I'm Leilani, your friendly neighborhood sea witch who likes to break down what makes other people's magic work. I've actually been doing this type of study officially since 2018, but I've been curious about it since I had The Art of Cartooning by Walter T. Foster, as well as many different drawing books since I was really young. For those of you who don't know, an art study is simply a study conducted about objects, people, clothes, lighting, etc., and seeing how they work in art. If you want to know how to draw fabric, then just drape a blanket, a shirt, any sort of fabric onto an object and see how it looks in the light, positions, whatnot that you can do. Curious on how to draw fur? Just draw different textures of fur and see how they react to light, or wind, or wetness, and many more. If you follow me on any of my social medias, including my Patreon, you'll see that I do quite a lot of these. Specifically, art style studies, as I like to break them down, see what they do, try to implement them in my own style, let's see what works. Some things stick, others don't. If you clicked on this video, you're probably wondering how you can master this wonderful skill of rendering perfectly in other people's styles with ease. This is not that video. There are actually very few styles I try to copy exactly right in every way. If your goal is to have a totally accurate art style from the original source, then maybe this video isn't for you. I don't know your reason. Maybe you want it for specific commissions, or maybe you just want a little more attention and you see that style is getting more attention. For me, the important thing about my art studies is not I want to be as accurate as humanly possible. It's more that I want to understand them as much as I can. Tomaclock, or now I believe he goes by Rendering Breakdowns, has a great series on rendering breakdowns, as well as Pick Art, Harry Gold, YouTube Art School, and other artists on YouTube doing breakdowns more accurately. I wouldn't say that this is a beginning artist video. In fact, I think that you need a better understanding of fundamentals to really get other people's work. I will cover why a good understanding of art fundamentals, at the very least a review, is important for an art style study, like right now. If you've taken art classes, or at the very least you've seen a bunch of YouTube videos, then you've heard of some of these words before. Anatomy, perspective, form, value, lighting, composition, and color. These are all things that have to be understood on some level in order to draw. You want your colors to go pop? You have to understand how colors interact with each other. You want to make something look really big? Then you have to make other objects look really small and position them properly so they look okay. You want to draw your favorite character from your favorite show? Congrats, you have some level of understanding for anatomy. Art is a lot of math, shapes, and rulers. Not every single artist is going to follow these ideas exactly, but every artist has some general understanding of why these things exist. If you haven't clicked away already, then you are one of the few people that can learn this very special secret. It's actually not totally necessary to master everything about every one of these subjects. I'm constantly trying to learn better anatomy, perspective, and gesture drawing. That's how art works. You're always learning. You're always a student of your craft, no matter how much media you're working with. Digital, 2D animation, 3D modeling, sculpting, painting, markers, or even sketching. Everyone uses these principles to work on their piece and create a final product that they can be proud of. You can't actually draw without knowing them in some way. The people you've admired for their art, their work, all of them have an understanding of these fundamentals. The stylization usually comes after clinical thinking of your work, or sometimes retroactively looking through your art and seeing what works and what doesn't. Honestly, art fundamentals are at least 7 videos on their own, but there are many tutorials that even art teachers could vouch for. So I'll leave that to them. I guarantee you that if I continue this YouTube thing in a year, 2 years from now, I'll update this video at least once. You could even use these studies as a way to get better at perspective, expressions, and even color choices. If you're wanting some form of formal education on the topic, there are free materials such as YouTube videos, Discord servers, or even online classes that are available for some smaller fee. There will always be a bigger idea and a new way to discover how things have or will be used. Having a basic understanding of these things and practicing them is very important in the choices that are made in each art style. Which leads me to my second point. An art style study, according to many articles like Studio Binder, Routledge Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and Introduction of Art by University of North Georgia, describe art styles as the choices an artist makes to create the general appearance of a piece. Little side note, I don't think I spelled Routledge right. Routledge. Basically, long story short, it's not how you naturally draw, or your lack of knowledge on a particular subject. It's how you learn how to make things. I think a lot of artists, including myself, have at one point mistaken an art style for how we naturally draw. Like having an inherent talent for something, like drawing, somehow makes an art style more special. I'm here to tell you, and I'm going to hold your hand when I say this, it's the reason you need to learn and practice. These are the things that make the perfect little artist. Oh. But you'll always be learning and going back to these every few years when you feel like you've gotten a block on something. It's important because any good art style understands that you are already learning, but you are specifically making choices on how to break the rules and how to use them to your advantage. There are some really great stories about artists who are completely self-taught or how they have flunked out because people just didn't understand their methods. I'm also here to say, holding your hand again, you are probably not one of those people who is completely self-taught and already knows how everything works. Just because someone is self-taught, that doesn't always mean that they didn't discover or research things that you would otherwise probably find in a classroom, or that they were magically born special. We're not sorcerers. It just means that they didn't have a formal training. They still worked hard, learned things as they went, and practiced. That means, yes, sometimes you have to go not draw anime, and you need to draw from real life, or you need to go outside. I hate that too, but touching grass is good for you, unless you're like my sister who has allergies. So, no, it's not your art style that the hand kind of looks a little claw-y. And no, it's not your art style that one eye looks lower and bigger than the other one when it shouldn't be. And no, AI is not an art style. Stop trying to convince yourself it is. It is, however, a choice that you put the color in the iris into the pupil area because the eye just looks more alive. It is an art style choice that you decide not to totally follow the fisheye lens because you want the environment to feel more claustrophobic. You don't need to follow formal training, nor do you necessarily need to learn fundamentals before you do anything, but they are important and worth your time as you understand them. Both learning and doing can happen at the same time. Picking what you like is actually super important in choosing how you develop your art style. Speaking of, I've been using a lot of your statements when I really mean this is what I do. This section isn't going to be much different, but I did want to point out specifically that this is the way I do art studies. When you're faced with moments of, I want to draw like that, the main question is, why do I want to draw like that? What is it about this style that I like? Maybe you'll like the way that an artist uses their color choices in their city pop landscape. Maybe you like how an artist's animation style works versus how they draw in their free time. Or maybe you just like how somebody uses cell shading. See, the reason I do this is because I focus on aspects of the style, and when I do that, it becomes way less stressful and aimless because I'm not wondering how to do it. Rendering Breakdowns has great videos about different rendering styles, how they work, as well as researching on them. For me, I like identifiable silhouettes, bright colors, and I want to learn to be less rigid with my line art. So I look for styles that focus on those choices and see how I can make them part of my own. Notice how I say make them part of my art style, not into my art style. My art style is still the choices I make, the concepts I've learned, and the influences I've had. I don't want to change my art style into someone else's. I still want them to look like I've made them. Harry Gold on a Mary Q stream actually made this observation.
We had a book by a caricature artist that I really liked. Thought his art style was so cool and I wanted to draw exactly like that. My dad would say, don't try and force it, right? Because you will end up drawing the style instead of what you're trying to draw.
For context, Harry Gold is a well-known artist on YouTube for knowing how to replicate other art styles and do them accurately. Like, scary accurately. If you told me that there was a Digimon Pokemon promotion between franchises, I would have believed you had I not seen the speed paint myself. Is there anything wrong with knowing how to draw Sonic characters accurately? No. You want to be able to replicate Naoko Takeuchi's shoujo art style? Go for it! I just think that when doing an art style study, it's not about making exactly what the artist did, it's about how you've interpreted these choices and make them your own. Initially, when I was younger, I wanted to copy Disney, early DreamWorks, My Little Pony. I was obsessed with trying to make the style accurate. But instead of asking what I liked about it, I basically just copied without understanding anything. After I started asking myself why this art appeals to me and being more critical about my own work, the process felt less stressful and more like I was actually getting some work done. References are an artist's best friend. Some people find them as a form of cheating since everything comes from your mind, right? Well, yes and no. Yes, you can get ideas from your own head, and if you're practicing in a mindful way, understanding how art styles work should make it easier. You shouldn't necessarily always need a reference because it's a crutch, right? Here's the thing, in an art style study, you're working with nothing but references. Looking at how characters might move, the different ways other characters are presented in media, how maybe one character is really realistic and the other is very cartoony. You're not really going to know how a pose that you can't find from a screenshot from a show or a movie happens unless you reference what's already there. Yes, you might be tempted to trace. Well, here's a secret. You're allowed to trace. Just don't go saying that you didn't trace and present it as your own. This is for practice and understanding how it feels under your hand. Tracing can be a tool, but you can't abuse it. With my initial Sailor Moon study, I definitely traced a lot. Mostly to get a feeling of where the joints were, how big the head was, stuff like that. Eventually, you'll have to learn how to draw from reference and understand how the style works from there. That's where the studying of the fundamentals come in handy. Because you've already studied these or are in the process of studying it, and now have practiced drawing enough that you're comfortable trusting your own eyes, you can now see how artists made certain choices. When it comes to art styles that I've been exposed to for a good part of my life, I like to draw a character from memory to see how accurate my memory is to the real thing. This is usually a bust of the character, which is meant to be giving you a general idea of what the style looks like, especially if it's the main character. Then after that, I use a reference point to point out what I've identified in this style and what may have missed in this style. For example, while I initially did my first Fakemon around 2020, I had to do a lot of research on how to render colors and the shape language of Fakemon. I had to look at years of actual Pokemon art, as well as looking at all the amazing Fakemon artists out there like Jack from Subjectively, Infamous Trainers, showcasing of other artists, and a lot of other people. I found that it helped with simplifying my character designs and making identifiable expressions and silhouettes to help the eye. While, yes, it's great for making Fakemon, it also helped me identify tangent lines and make something not so cluttered. Especially since you can be more than one thing. Niches are great, but variety is the spice of life. Would I say my first attempt is good? No. I would say that it still took a long time of practice, redrawing, and even scrapping entire ideas before I got to a point I was happy with. Even then, I would say that my work requires more practice to have more modern techniques present in my art. Same with, say, my Sonic the Hedgehog art. I did Sonic from memory, and while yes, Sonic's design and art direction has varied through the years, I definitely see a lot of difference between what it looks like in my mind versus the references through the years. In addition to that, because the characters have varied body types, proportions, and species, it's a lot of fun to really play with the different ways characters are shown throughout all of Sonic's history. And I do mean all. I find that this is a great way to challenge what you remember versus what you see, and points out the importance of reference. I would usually say a good art study comes with practice. And that's still true. It doesn't necessarily have to be every day of your life. You have priorities, like school and work and family functions, other art projects, socializing, and that's all okay. Art can be a quick thing that clicks instantly or takes forever to get done. My art studies usually last about a month in a non-continuous fashion, so maybe realistically it takes me about 2 or 3 months to give or take on my own. I'd say maybe an hour and a half, at least twice a day, maybe. The reason why is because you're usually working on a new style that you're not familiar with, or that maybe you've seen but you've never drawn before. It's going to consume you for a while. And also be wary about copying versus practicing. This is more recent advice that other artists have started to bring up. Practice makes perfect is a very popular thing that happened while I was younger at least, but now I've come to realize that it's not the whole truth. Practicing doesn't mean just keep drawing the same thing, it means that you'll need to actively think about what's wrong with what I'm drawing and fix it. Sneak peek at a future video, which you can actually catch the full works in progress on Patreon, I drew the Daisy scene from The Amazing Digital Circus in the Sailor Moon art style. I realized very quickly that I did the sketch, and I didn't do it in her style of Sailor Moon, I did it in my style. So I had to look at references, and I had to say, what is it about the Sailor Moon style that is doing this versus how I'm doing this? A lot of it had to do with how the eyes were drawn and how the characters' mouths were more triangular than how I was doing it. I think it took a good 2 passes before it looked more like Sailor Moon than me, as well as recognize how I didn't necessarily know how it looked in my style. Now, you might get frustrated either because you think you're not good enough at this, or you think that you've got it perfect, and then you come back to it and realize that you did everything wrong. That's also why I don't necessarily love the idea of being totally accurate. After a while, you'll get quicker at rendering, you'll end up finding that you're understanding the material better, and then you'll see how it influences your latest work. I think my art style has changed drastically since these art studies, both traditionally and digitally, though some differences might not be as obvious as others. Maybe it'll change your life. Maybe it won't. The important thing is that you've tried something, and I hope that this will help. So that's about it. I wish this video was maybe a little longer, going through other processes like how different my traditional art is versus my digital art with this process. The thing is that this is just my way of doing it, and I'm sure everyone on YouTube, Skillshare, TikTok, other platforms have plenty of other ways of doing the same thing. This is an overview on how I do things, what you can expect out of these things, how this can improve on what you're looking for in your style. Remember that this is not a competition, and there is no right way of doing things. You do not need 100K followers on any social media to make a difference with your art. Well, I gotta close up shop. My potions are calling for me, and it's going to be late. Keep the magic flowing. I'll see you later.